Okay, ready for the last talk of this morning. So please welcome on stage Jenny Lee. So Jenny comes from Leeds, UK, and she likes the countryside, old paintings, and cats. And a fun fact about her that she absolutely told me is that, unlike some other developers, she really likes zombies. So much that she actually paints zombie cats on the countryside. We won't judge.
Yeah.
Anyway, she's also a great software engineer at Figma, so please enjoy her talk.
Hello. And that is a lesson to all the other speakers who don't give him a fun fact. You get one given to you. So be ready. But yeah, hello. I hope everyone's having a nice conference. And I'm going to talk to you about Figma's widget code generator, like what it is, what widgets are, and how we built it. So Eduardo's done a bit of background, but I'll do it again. I live in Leeds, so I work remote. Figma does have offices in London and some other European cities, but I work from home. I like fell running, which is where you run up a hill and run down it again. I like oil painting, so I'm very happy to be in Italy, the home of all the best artists. And I'm just paying my cat tax there, so that's a picture of my cat. So if we get actually into it, I assume most of you have probably used Figma, but we'll just go over it anyway for those of you who haven't. It's Figma design first, is where your designer will like experiment and then design the things that they then hand over to you to implement. It runs in the browser, but there's also an app. And the exciting thing about it is it's multiplayer. So you can see people's cursors, you can see they're in the file. And when they make edits, like you can see them in what's basically real time. And then we've also got Figjam. So this is our answer to a whiteboard tool. It's also using multiplayer and collaborative, like it's all built on the same canvas. And this means that your whole team at once can get inside the whiteboard, just like a real whiteboard. We basically hold all our meetings on it. When we're on Zoom, and you can do things like put stickies, use stickers, like draw things, and run widgets, which is the exciting thing that we're talking about in this talk. So who, like, if you can do a show of hands, like who's either used Figma plugins? Yeah, or Figma widgets? Because I was worried I'd be like telling everyone things that they already know, but it looks like some of you haven't, so that's okay. So we'll start with plugins as they came first. The aim of plugins is to extend functionality and just kind of like personalize your Figma and Figjam experience a bit more. So that's automating things that you'd normally do manually, like if you want to import a load of styles or like do a mass rename of a load of layers, like instead of doing that manually, you can just like write a bit of code that does it for you. I also know people that have like used it to figure out what pattern to tile their kitchen in and stuff like that. So yeah, you can do what you want with them basically. And what you do is you just write a little program. It's written in JavaScript and gets executed in a sandbox on the main thread. So you can't do anything super intensive because then Figma will hang and it will be your fault. But there's a really good article about how it works in the sandbox. If you Google like how I wrote Figma plugins and still sleep at night or something, someone's wrote a great blog about it. And then you can either have a headless plugin like this one in the example where it just like tallies up the votes and puts them on the canvas, or it can pop up a little UI and then you just write that in HTML and CSS like normal and put it in an iframe. And then because of the iframe, you can also make any external HTTP requests you want, like integrations with other tools and stuff. Plugins are installed per user, so if you install it, it's just for you, and you can run one per file. This is because of the main thread thing that we spoke about before, and it'll only be visible to you. So if it pops up the little iframe UI, you're the only person that will see it for that plugin, but if it makes any changes to the canvas, like in this GIF example, everyone will see it because it's the same as if a user had made change to the canvas. It can just do anything a user can do. Then we'll come to widgets. Widgets are like plugins' fun brother. So they are rendered directly on the canvas, which means that they're visible and interactive for like everyone in the file. And you can have an unlimited number of them per file. They're also used to extend the functionality, but lean a bit more towards like the fun and collaboration side. So things like voting or polls or timers. This GIF is just like a +1 one. So when you click on that, everyone in the file can click on it and see it goes up. We've got one we use in our stand-up every day that just like randomizes who's going to speak next. So yeah, you can use them for literally anything. The aim of them is to improve collaboration, help facilitation, and yeah, just be a nice toy. They actually came from a maker week, so twice a year we have like a hackathon type week, and widgets came out of that, so that's a nice story. And widgets are written in a React-like way. So we've written a widget API that provides you React-like components. They're not exactly React. They just call into like plugin functions under the hood, but that means that they will give you a component definition for like frames and auto layouts and text. And then because they render directly on the canvas, you can just map one-to-one with layers in Figma. This will make more sense when we make a widget in a minute. And we also provide hooks for using state and any other like custom user events that we have for widgets. And then, so they both have different use cases, but there's some stuff that they have in common, which is that they both provide an API to the Figma or Figjam file using the Figma global object, which is provided at runtime, and we'll see an example of in a moment. And so basically anything you can do with the GUI, you can do with widgets or plugins. Maybe some extra metadata stuff about like seeing who's in the file and things like that. And also it's all public. So if you go on the website, there will be documentation for this API, and there is a community where you can publish your own plugins and use widgets and plugins from other people, which is really nice. So now we're going to do the stressful bit, which is we're going to make a widget together. I'll pretend I'm pair programming with you all. So we're going to here. I've made a design for a really simple voting widget where, like, if you press the plus button, the number should go up, and then at the bottom, like, the little avatars should increase according to the number, and it should be a picture of the person who's voted, which today will only be me. And then I've also got a project here. So is this big enough? No. Can we zoom in a bit more? Is that big enough? Do we want bigger? Yes for bigger. Can we keep zooming until we say stop? Is that big enough? Cool. So I've got a widget project here. It's like super simple. Bigger? No? Yes? Bigger? Okay. Yeah, I've got a widget project here. It's really simple. We've got one file, code.tsx, where we write all our code in TypeScript. Doesn't have to be TypeScript. I just like TypeScript. In here we use the Figma global object that's provided at runtime, which gives us some widget stuff. So we've got a thing to set state, and then we have got the different component types. So these are all the same as like layer types in Figma. And then all widgets and plugins have a manifest file that just specifies like metadata about the thing you're doing, like what name to run it with and what IDs and things. And then I just have a tiny package JSON with 2 scripts, and at the moment I'm running the watch script. So hopefully you can all see it change as we code together. So let's get started. I have, again, like I said, it was just React-like. No, I don't want that. So I've got a function that returns some JSX, and then I use this widget API to just register my widget. And if we go back into Figma, I can run this simple vote widget, and it says, I am a widget. And if I like put some exclamation marks here, it will add it to my widget. But that's useless. We want to make our voting widget. I'm also going to use a timer, I think, so we can see how long this takes us. Oh, I've hit the Wi-Fi problem. Come on, please. No, maybe we won't have the timer. We'll just do it in our heads. So yeah, if I wanted to make this vote widget from scratch, just like if you were implementing a Figma design from scratch, I'd have to go through and I'd have to say, like, I might need the Wi-Fi, we will see. I will have to go through and be like, oh, this is an auto layout. And then inside it, I've got a frame. And then inside that, I've got this like weird rectangle thing that needs to be in the middle. And like, I'm sure as all you know, that will take some time. So what we're going to do instead is run our Widget Code Generator plugin, which I think is going to need the internet. Can I connect to this hotspot? Oh, I don't have that one. This one?
Try this.
Thank you.
I don't know if it's the correct password, but try it.
We're in? Are we in? Now can we run it? Yay! Cool. Yeah, so we've run our code generator plugin. This has given us a load of code for the design that we've selected. It's a bit small, so I'm going to copy it and then take it into VS Code, and hopefully we can see it in a bit more detail. It's just given us a function, so it's basically a component called simple vote, and then it's returning the more components that's just the structure of the layer tree of the design that we want to implement. So like when we were going through it, we've got an auto layout, and inside that another auto layout, which is kind of just like a flexbox for people that aren't super familiar with auto layout. We've got SVG, we've got text. I'm sure you can like imagine what else is there. We have this bit that's not working, so we'll comment that out and come back to it. But then if I render my simple vote component and go back into Figma and refresh this, it looks pretty like our design already. That's because it is rendering directly on the canvas. We can just go one-to-one back into a widget. it's not rendering these things at the bottom, and that's because they are something special. They are instances of this avatar component. A component is just like a thing you have in your design system. If I want to use the avatar multiple times and like change it from the root, then I'll use instances of it. And if I update the original component, all of my instances will update. So in code, I'm also going to have to define this avatar component. So I don't inline have a load of different definitions of avatar. So I'll generate code for that as well. Copy it, go back to VS Code, paste. And now we can uncomment the bit that was using avatar, and it should all work again. So if I re-render, now I have 3 circles at the bottom, which is really hard to see because it's white. So let's make the outline red. And now you can see it's got the 3 avatars at the bottom, but it hasn't rendered the image yet because we're not generating code for where you're going to host your image, because we don't know where you're going to do that, and we're not hosting it for you. But this is useless if it doesn't do anything, so let's add some functionality to our widget. In order to count the votes, we're going to want to have some state of who our voters are. So we'll say voters, set voters. We're going to use this use sync state hook, which is very similar to use state in React. And so we'll say our name voters and start it as an empty array. I also know that it is going to be of type user just because that's the type that gets returned. And then we'll make something to update our voters when you click the voting button. So we'll say on click, we're going to set our voters as the voters you had before and the current user. So I'm using the Figma global object, the API that's given, and I'm just going to get the current user from it. I can get other stuff like all of the active users or like whatever else I want, but at the moment I'll just get the current user. This is complaining because it technically could be empty, even though it probably isn't, so we'll just protect against that for now. And then I need to find my button and say on click of the button, we're going to call our vote. So all of these components that we've provided will take in an on click, because your widget is useless if it doesn't do anything. And then we will use our voters to update the number when you click on the button. Nope. And now if we go back, it should be interactive. So the number's going up. That's nice. These are still the same. That's not nice. So let's update it to show the right number of pictures. It's hard-coded at the moment to show us 3 avatars, but we want to show it avatars for each voter. So we can map through our voters and just return an avatar for each one. And we also wanted our avatar to have the picture of the person that's voted, which we can do because we have a voter for each like current user. And because avatar is just a function that it's given us for the component, we can extend its props manually and give it a voter prop of type user. And then when we want to put the image in, the fill type of the frame is an image fill. So we've got a placeholder saying, put your image URL here, which we can do, and say props, voter, photo URL. Again, this can also be empty, so we'll just default to an empty string if it's not there. And it should have put me in the box. So now if I keep voting, there I am. And I can remove the red outline now because you can see the picture. So we've made a widget super quick in like less than 10 minutes. We can also make it do other stuff. So like I said before about the instances, because they are just functions, we have provided like ready-made some props in there for you. So anything that you would normally be able to pass into any other component, like if you wanted to override the size or like change something in an inside layer, you could do that if you wanted to break away from your design system. But we've also provided an on-click as part of these props. So I don't have to do anything in this avatar. If I want to add an on-click to the vote things, I can just say, like, if I click on my face and say we wanted to like remove a vote when you click on it, I could pass an on-click into there, which will say remove vote. I'll take it as the index of the thing in the array and just add an index to this map. And then we need to define remove vote, which is the stressful part. Because how do you remove something from a list at an index? But I think I have remembered how to do it. So if we just set the voters and do a slice from 0 to the index, and then do it again from the index to the length. Now if I come back, if I make a vote and then start clicking on my votes, they go away again. That was the stressful bit. And finally, this is the flashy bit coming up, is I've decided that my blue button is just too dull, like no one wants basic blue. So I want to change it to a gradient. We'll have it like a really nice gradient and it will fade to pink. And we'll have it on an angle. And now if I was like, right, go and implement that gradient for me, please. I don't know about you, but I would be like getting ready to go into war with this gradient. But because we have a code generator plugin, it's basically just made it for me. So I can just copy this fill, go back into my code and find my button, replace the fill with the gradient code. And now when I refresh my widget, it's a really nice gradient. And yeah, because it is like one-to-one from the canvas goes back to the canvas, it can give me exactly the same gradient. And I think that's it for our vote widget. So let's go back to the slides and talk a bit about how it was made. We made it using the plugin API because the code generator is just a plugin. And the main thing that we used is this call to Figma current page selection, which returns whatever you have selected. And basically everything in a Figma file is just a big old tree. So like you start at your canvas and then you've got your frames, inside frames and rectangles, etc., etc., etc. So it just returns us a object representation of the subtree of whatever you have selected. You can see we've got some metadata like telling us the name, which lets us know what type of tag to use or what to call the function. We've got a load of visible props which mapped really easily just to passing in like the display options to the tags, like it's this width, it's this color, blah, blah, blah. They're all pretty straightforward. For this case of the button, it is using an auto layout, which is a thing that's like Flexbox. So this has a load of like really weird props that are basically just saying, should it hug its contents? Should it have this spacing? Should it be horizontal or vertical? So we translated that to something a bit more CSS-y, so people writing widgets would actually be able to read it rather than figuring out what primary axis sizing mode means. And then finally, anything that has children, we just go through the children and generate code for them. And it really was that simple. And that button would generate some widget code that looks just like this. So you could have written that yourself, but it was nice that it just gave it to us. And if we wanted to edit it, hopefully it's readable enough that like you can go in and change the stroke or change the corner radius if you wanted to. And then the other fun thing, if we go back into seeing the slides, this press me here is an actual widget. You can tell that because it's like rendering this little code thing at the top. And because it is rendered directly on the canvas, like if I wanted to change its fill, I could change its fill. Or if I wanted to like make it square, I could make it square. And do whatever I want to test out what my new widget would look like. I could also take it and then copy it as layers and paste it back and paste here. And now it is just Figma layers again. And then the other cool thing, which I hope you're going to be able to see, is if I open the console, which is going to be really tiny. And the Figma global object that I spoke about before, if you want to play around with it without like setting up a whole project and things like that, you can just type it into the console in a Figma file. Anyone can do this. I don't have like special permissions or anything. And you can find all about what's in your file. So if I wanted to like go and inspect this, I could do the current page selection thing, which I probably have here, and it will give me that whole representation about what that node looks like. And you can't just read, you can also write. So if I wanted to call like Figma create rectangle and things like that, it would also put things in my file for me. And that's it for playing with that. So as a quick recap, I think we learnt what plugins and widgets are and like how they're different and how to use each different one. The fact that there's an API that you can just go and use to make your own with. And you should go and make your own because they're fun. And then you could impress everyone in your meetings being like, look, I made this cool widget game thing. And if you do make it, use the Widget Code Generator. You just have to like Google, it's available on Figma community, so you can install it for free and try it out. And I think that is it. So if you want to talk to me about like developer handoff or what really annoys you about taking designs from Figma or how you use your design systems with Figma, that would be really cool. There's a QR code there for any feedback, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Jenny. Any question for Jenny? Come on, any question? Curiosity, yeah.
Since there is no other question, I'm not going to ask
I know
one.
what
Maybe
this
difficult.
is gonna be.
So it's really cool that you can use reactjsday to define the React-like components. So does it mean that you are using your own React custom reconciler or actually renderer behind the scenes to do so? How does it work?
No, so because they are rendered on the canvas, it's like an illusion of React. They basically just call through to functions that look like, if I type it, it will make more sense. So whenever you call frame, it goes to the Figma API, and that will just go to Figma create frame, and then pass all the things in there, and just sends it to the plugin API, if that was your question. So yeah, if you'd put frame here and you'd be like, I want my frame to have a width of 100, then this would just pass it straight through. So you could also write it like this if you wanted to write your whole widget, which was originally how you did it. And then we were like, that's quite hard. I want to write it in this way. So we did that.
Any more questions? You can ask her to just sort an array, pick the last element, whatever. No? You're okay. Okay. Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you.